We have a bit of breaking news based around the Ford Ecoboost 1 litre wet belt failures, and it's positive. I promise it's positive for a change. It looks like Ford are going to be offering a bit more of a helping hand to those customers who have suffered an engine loss through this issue, or just suffered this issue in general. That is according to the document that I've got in front of me right now. All will be shared, don't worry. This document is currently doing the rounds with Ford dealerships here in the UK. And before we get into it, I thought we could have a bit of background on the problem. If there's anyone watching who hasn't heard about this issue, here you go, this is for you. So, back in 2012, Ford released this Ecoboost engine, which we now know as the Classic or Fox engine. Now, engines that came before typically had a timing belt on the outside of the engine, on the side of the engine, and its own little protective compartment well away from any of the engine fluids. In 2012, Ford decided to release this engine into quite a large amount of the range, Fiestas and Focuses included, where the belt was submerged in oil, thus a wet belt system. Now, the combination of that rubber belt and the oil is not a great one. The belt starts to break down, the little rubber particles finds its way through the engine, blocks oil feeds, blocks oil lines, and ultimately the engine ends up starved of oil. It's a well-known problem, well publicised. We've spoke about it a lot on this channel here, as have other channels as well. So up until this point, Ford UK have just point blank refused to issue a recall on any of these faulty engines. It's left a lot of owners feeling let down by the brand, and also out of pocket having to replace engines well before time. There was quite a significant advance which needs to be brought into this conversation in January of this year, however, and it's when Ford USA issued a recall for about 250,000 cars that use this engine. There were other specific points about the cars that caused them to recall it, but we'll get into that when I start speaking about the article, because that goes into the specifics of it. Now, the reason that Ford USA recalled these cars, apart from being quite a litigious country, is because it affected the safety of the vehicles. So there's a pump responsible for the braking system, and that belt could also, well, the particles of the belt could also find their way into this pump and cause brake failure. So the combination of a class action lawsuit and safety concerns caused Ford to have to do something over in the USA. And that is one of the points on this document that they've issued out to their dealerships here in the UK. Let's start talking through this. As ever, if you're enjoying this video, please do hit the like button. If you enjoy this kind of thing, hit the subscribe button. And also, always remember, leave your thoughts in the comments section below. We have some really good discussions on videos just like this. And also, if you've suffered a wet belt failure, I want to hear from you. Drop it in the comments below. So the document starts with Ecoboost wet belt goodwill support. You will be aware of the growth of social media and press coverage on Ecoboost vehicles in the UK. The purpose of this letter is to communicate the ongoing support that we will offer Ecoboost customers for classic engines. It's sometimes referred to as classic, sometimes Fox, but what we're talking specifically about there is pre-2019 manufactured engines. Post-2019, well, we could talk about that as well. So post-2019, they replaced the problematic belt with a chain, but it still uses a wet belt to drive the oil pump. So the same problem is going to occur on those post-2019 cars. They're probably just not old enough to suffer from it yet, although we are starting to see them come through now. So, Ford is confident in the robustness and reliability of its Ecoboost engine technology when stated guidelines for maintenance and service are followed. Not sure I can agree with that one. Ford will support customers with wet belt issues on Ecoboost Fox Classic engines pre-2019 manufactured, where customers have a full service history for vehicles up to 10 years old and less than 150,000 miles. Ford is expanding the age criteria for support from 7 to 10 years. So there's the first one for those of you who own these. It's now gone up to 10 years. So if you're in that category and you suffer a failure, it's going to take you into account now. Points of clarity. North America recall. Here we go. So there have been online comments and confusion about the Ecoboost recall in North America. To clarify, the recall announced for North America in early 2024, January, relates to vehicles powered by the 1 litre Ecoboost engines produced with an automatic transmission. the recall doesn't apply to European vehicles because they are not the same. Key hardware differences between the regions have led to a unique issue in North America, but not Europe. Okay, let's have our own clarification on that clarification. So automatics do suffer from this problem more. Without getting into all the technical detail, basically added vibration from the automatic gearbox speeds up this problem, but that is not to say that manuals don't suffer from it. That's what we see most of. Right, let's carry on here. So next steps, Ford will provide a goodwill gesture support for these engines provided the below requirements are met. And here we go, this is what's going to change it up a bit. Vehicle engine concern only relates to the wet belt timing, so if you've got other problems with your engine, they're not going to want to hear about it still. Vehicle cases up to 10 years old with a full service history in less than 150,000 miles driven. More on the service history in just a moment. Full service history documentation in accordance with the vehicle service portfolio, which can either be, here we go, from a Ford authorised repairers, a mix of Ford and independent garages, or from independent garages alone. There we go, so not strictly a Ford history required either. Next point. Service history documentation can be plus or minus 3 months of the due date. So we've now got a bit of leeway on when that service was done. It doesn't need to be specifically on the day. Vehicles with a full service history but missing a service in 2020, the pandemic period, will be included. Good, fair enough. And also, you do not need to provide history of the lubricants used in the vehicle service. Now that might seem a bit of a funny point, but these wet belt engines call for a certain oil to be used, and previously they might have been a bit picky about what oil's been used in a previous service, but it seems to be the case they're not going to do that anymore. Regardless of what oil was used in the service, they're still going to honour the goodwill gesture. Where above criteria are met, the CRC, essentially Ford, will support 100% of the repair cost. So we don't quite have what the USA got in terms of a recall, but the criteria upon which that goodwill gesture is going to apply just got a whole lot wider. And honestly, I think this message can't spread enough. So if you know someone who's got one of these cars or has suffered an engine failure with one of these cars, please do send this video on to them so that they can be a bit more informed going in. I really hope it helps. It's not fair that people are out of pocket having to replace these engines because of an engineering design failure. Now, if you're thinking about buying one of these cars, just don't. You might hear from some sources, it's okay, 2019 onwards it got the new engine. No, don't. As I referred to earlier in this video, it still uses a wet belt to drive the oil pump, which is seen to be problematic, so just avoid the 1 litre Ecoboosts altogether. It's a real shame, but I think it's for the best. Now, if you are thinking about buying something else, hopefully a bit more reliable, use this channel to have a look at the buyer's guides, be informed going into the purchase, and also use vehiclescore.co.uk. Put the plate of the car that you're thinking about buying into their system. It'll tell you the good and bad points for free. Also, if you're serious about buying, use the 15% discount voucher in the description below to make sure you get a good car. Now, thank you so much for watching. I'll await your thoughts in the comments section below.